All right, everybody. So we're continuing with our conversation about the French and Indian War. And so far, we've seen um, George Washington's experience in war. And we know that George Washington eventually stepped down from his post as colonel for the British because he just felt like he needs a little bit more training before he continues on this road. So England needs somebody to really take control of this war. At this point in time, there's only been a few battles, and the French are in the lead. And we also know the advantages and disadvantages the advantages for the French and the disadvantages for the British, mostly coming from their fighting style. And probably the most desired spot for the British to take control of is a fort out on the Ohio River called Fort Duquesne. So this is Fort Duquesne right here. Now you might remember looking at Fort Necessity yesterday, and Fort Necessity just pales in comparison. This is a large fortification. The way in which it's set onto the Ohio River geographically is smart. They can see this bend in the river, so they know who's coming, who's going. And again, it is fortified heavily with soldiers, but it also has, like we said, civilians living within the fort as well. Fort Duquesne, at the southwestern part of Pennsylvania, really for the British feel like is the stronghold of the French. And if they were to take down Fort Duquesne, they feel as if it's almost like the mothership of the French forts in the Ohio Valley area. They're able to take it down. This would be painful for the French. It would split up the French in their own territory, and it would almost force them to surrender. So every single regiment that the British send out head toward Fort Duquesne. Now, Fort Duquesne, again, like I said, is fortified with French soldiers, but it also has Native Americans as well. And we learn that the natives fight in a very different way, that the British just are having a hard time to adjust. So Britain will send many different regiments out there, and eventually they will send this fellow right here. His name is Edward Braddock. Now, he's sort of like the big guns of the British military. Braddock is known throughout England, but really throughout Europe, for being a very strict military disciplinarian who will get the job done. When he comes to the colonies and he experiences the colonies for the first time, he is impressed by the colonies, but he also finds almost like a hobby in hunting down Native Americans. So he gets a reputation among all of the French and the natives for being just a very cruel person. Well, Braddock thinks to himself, you know what? I'm going to go to Ohio. I'm going to go to Fort Duquesne. And I'm going to bring a very large regiment with me. I'm going to bring the cavalry. I'm going to do it all. And I'm going to try and give the French a taste of their own medicine. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to surprise attack them at Fort Duquesne, which is a very thoughtful and appropriate idea by Edward Braddock. But he is a little cocky, and he also does not know how to fight this way, right? He's trained in the style of the gentleman war, and he's ready to give something like guerrilla warfare a try. But again, he's never really done it before. So he pulls up his convoy. He gets lines up his men, all of his soldiers, and marches towards the Ohio River. And it's about like dusk, evening, that he edges close to Fort Duquesne. All he needs to do is to cross the Ohio River and attack Fort Duquesne. And he feels like he has the element of surprise because it's getting to be dark, and the French would never expect it. They really, really wouldn't. For whatever reason, when Braddock gets to the Ohio River, he balks, he stops, and he decides, rather than attacking, he's going to wait until morning when he feels more comfortable attacking, because that's just what he's most comfortable with. Well, as you can kind of guess, native scouts clearly spot Braddock and his men. And rather than Braddock surprise attacking Fort Duquesne surprise attacks Braddock. The battle was a disaster. Both sides felt the the consequences of war, right? There were heavy losses on both sides, but it's ultimately a British loss. Additionally, Braddock is killed in battle. And while he's killed in battle, in the midst of the battle, two British soldiers kind of pull him out of the way because everybody knows that the natives are not happy with Braddock, considering he has this very unsavory hobby of attacking Native Americans for sport. So they pull him to a side and kind of hide him because they know if the natives see him that he's dead, they're going to mutilate him, kind of like what the Half King did to Jumonville. And after the battle ends, they go back and they couldn't actually find his body. Braddock had kind of gone missing. And really, we're not totally sure 100% where Braddock really is. He could still be just like buried somewhere in the Pennsylvania forest. But either way, Braddock is dead and the British are losing. And although they attempted a difference in their fighting style, it was unsuccessful. And at this point in time, it sure looks like we're headed towards speaking French in those 13 British colonies based on what's happening so far in this war. How can the British turn this war around? What is it going to take for them to take this war that they're clearly losing and push it into a victory? How can they do this? And that's something we're going to explore moving forward. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to read some primary documents, letters written between Braddock, Benjamin Franklin, and George Washington. And you're going to answer the questions based on what you read. And it's really neat. It's actually Braddock preparing for this battle. Unfortunately, it's like his last letter. So anyway, please complete that. You can hand those in when you're finished. And I will see you tomorrow. Have a good day.